Hey y'all, so we're going to be talking about investing and overcoming your fears of investing because I used to be terrified of investing. It felt like this foreign language, like only people who were really smart knew how to do it, and I knew nothing about it. However, though, if I can figure it out, I know anybody can. And so let's first start with defining what an investor is, because I think for a lot of folks, we have this image in our head that an investor is a super wealthy Wall Street guy, wears a suit and tie to work every day, drives around in a Lamborghini, has a big yacht. Like that's, I think, what the American perception of an investor is. However, I'm a stay-at-home homeschool mom of 3 kids and I'm an investor. I invest. And guess what? If you have a 401k that you're contributing to, then guess what? You're an investor too. And so I think it's important that we start there with kind of redefining what an investor looks like, because I think that so many times we just kind of have convinced ourselves that an investor is just super wealthy, super smart. That's not me. I don't drive around in a Lamborghini. I'm not rich. I don't know how to do this big scary thing. However, this doesn't have to be scary. The first step to learning how to become an investor and overcoming your fear of investing is to research and to gain knowledge and understanding of how investing, how the stock market works. I highly recommend 2 resources. I will link to both of them in the description of this video. One is the book Unshakable by Tony Robbins. That book helped me understand this whole world of expense ratios and fees, something I knew nothing about. This was not talked about when I was going to college for my accounting degree. I don't remember at all expense ratios or fees being talked about. And I learned very quickly from that book, Unshakable by Tony Robbins, that your fees and your expenses that you pay for your retirement account, whether that's a 401k or a Roth IRA, those fees and expenses, they add up. They take away your wealth building potential. So you definitely want to do what you can to minimize your expenses. The other resource that I recommend is a PDF workbook called Investing Made Simple by Mom and Dad Money. It is fantastic. It's written in layman's terms. It's so easy to understand. He breaks it all down for you. It's a wonderful resource to have. If you work for a company that has a 401k option, especially if they have a 401k with a match, I highly recommend you take advantage of that. And what a match is say that your employer offers a 401k with a 6% match. That means that they will match up to 6% of your before tax income, so your gross income, to your 401k. So you get that 6% without actually having to add any additional money of your own. So long as you contribute up to 6% of your before tax income into your 401k, you will be able to get that 6% match. Highly recommend you take advantage of any matches that are offered to you. But I also recommend that you get a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA is a lot of people's favorite wealth building tool because it uses after tax dollars. So what does this mean? The before tax and the after tax. Before tax dollars comes before you've paid any taxes on that money, which is what happens in a traditional 401k and a traditional IRA. That uses before tax dollars. So you have not paid taxes on that money. A Roth 401k or a Roth IRA uses after tax dollars, meaning that you are paying taxes on that money now. The reason that this is so important is because you have to ask yourself, do you want to pay taxes on that money now while you're young and working? Or do you want to pay taxes on that money when you're older? And here's the thing, guys. Taxes always go up. It doesn't matter who's president, okay, guys? The taxes are gonna go up, okay? They historically do. So I say that because the taxes are going to be higher when you retire. And if you retire with a substantial amount of money, you may fall into a tax bracket you don't want to be in and have to pay an absorbent amount of taxes on that money because you haven't paid taxes on it yet. So that's why a lot of people recommend the Roth IRA and Roth 401ks, is because of the fact that you're using after tax dollars versus before tax dollars. So you're paying taxes on that money right now versus later on in life. But either way, I think that as long as you are saving for retirement, it doesn't matter that much if it's in a 401k or a Roth IRA. It doesn't matter that much. As long as you're actually actively saving for it, you are an investor. Now, you want to make sure that when you do contribute your money to a 401k or to a Roth IRA, that money is being invested. So right now, if you go to Vanguard's website or any brokerage firm, that's Vanguard, E-Trade, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, if you go to any of those brokerage firm websites and you open up a Roth IRA and say you put $1,000 in there, that $1,000 is not going to be immediately invested. You have to actually then go in and buy something with those dollars. I highly recommend that before you buy anything, you do your own research so that way you have an understanding of what you're buying. Mutual funds typically have a lower expense ratios, which we know that it keeps more money in our pockets, right? As well as historically, they perform pretty well. And so if you were going through Vanguard, you might want to go and look through various different Vanguard mutual funds. Do a comparison, figure out what mutual funds you want to invest in and which ones you maybe don't want to. And then you need to go and take that $1,000 and actually buy a mutual fund with it. Now, depending on the company you go through, there may be a minimum buy threshold. With Vanguard, the minimum is $3,000. So you would need to have $3,000 in your Roth IRA before you could purchase a Vanguard mutual fund. E-Trade, I believe that their threshold is $500, and I think Fidelity's is actually even lower. So do your research on the different brokerage companies out there and figure out which one you would like to open an account with and be able to start investing with. Now, let's kind of back up and punt a little bit and talk about your asset mix. Your asset mix, if you have ever worked for a big company before, you have probably filled out this little thing in order to open up the 401k with your company that kind of said what asset mix you wanted to go with. Like you usually have like aggressive, moderate, conservative, and sometimes a few others in between to choose from. And if you're anything like how I was, you probably just picked one that you thought made sense, but you didn't really actually know if it made sense or not. That's what I used to do. And so what you want to do is you want to go online and find a free online retirement calculator. I believe Bankrate has one, but there's so many out there. Just pick one and go through that and figure out not just how much you need to actually be setting aside and saving so then that way you can retire with the dollar amount that you want to. I'll get to that point in a minute. That's a really important point. But not only are you doing this so you can figure out how much you want to have saved by the time that you are retired, but you also want to know what your asset mix should be. So right now, my asset mix is moderate aggressive, okay? But as I get older and I start reaching closer to retirement age, I'm going to scale that back and bring it back down to more moderate conservative because of the fact that I know that I'm going to be reaching that age where soon I'm going to start living off of those investments. And so when you're aggressively growing that money, which is great and wonderful. And this depends on your risk tolerance. I'll explain that in a minute. This is really great and wonderful when you're being aggressive like that. But as you get older and you need to start living off that money, you need to scale back those investments to more conservative ones to stabilize out your portfolio. Now, your risk tolerance is how much risk you're willing to take. If you can't stomach big drops in watching your investments fall, then you don't have a very high risk tolerance, and that's totally fine. So you definitely need to know that, and a lot of online calculators have that as well, where they'll take into account your risk tolerance along with how much you want to have saved by the time that you retire. Now, retirement is not an age, it's a dollar amount. So you need to figure out how much it is that you would like to live off every single year in your retirement years. Do you want to live off $50,000 a year? Do you think that $50,000 a year might not be enough in 40, 50 years from now? If so, do you maybe want to have $70,000 a year to live off of, or do you want to have $100,000 to live off of? There's no shame here. It's just figuring out how much annual salary you want to pay yourself. Think about that for a second, because you're not working for anybody else now. You're now living off of what you have prudently saved all these years. So how much of that money do you want to be paying yourself every single year to live off of? That dollar amount is going to help determine how much you need to be saving and setting aside right now in order to achieve that end goal. So your homework is, if you have not already, go to an online retirement calculator and plug in the numbers, play with them, figure out how much you need to have saved by the time you reach retirement age in order to live off the amount of money that you want to in retirement, as well as how much you need to be contributing right now to your retirement. Other part of your homework is, if you work for a company that offers a 401k with a match, make sure you get enrolled in that and take advantage of the match. If you don't already have a Roth IRA opened, definitely open one if you qualify. There is some stipulations to opening up a Roth IRA, but a lot of folks qualify for a Roth IRA. So if you qualify for one, open up a Roth IRA and start doing your research and start doing your homework. You don't have to take my book recommendations if you don't want to, but I recommend you read and read and read, but you also apply the knowledge that you learn. Don't just read all these different books or these articles or all of these different things and not actually do anything with that money. All right, so there you have it. There's your homework, and happy investing.